right. Good evening, folks. Here is the show, episode number 2. We're diving into it with a solid author of all the things involving high strangeness. Tonight we have for you our guest, Mr. Ken Ammi, the host of the True Free Thinker website and author of many works that cover everything that we're going to talk about tonight, which is kind of the fringe and the biblical, the transhumanist agenda, how it goes all the way back until leads us up to the context of where we are now. So you have the floor, sir.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Indeed.
And if you get cold from being out there in the middle of the woods, just build a little fire and yeah, there you go.
Yeah, just gotta do squats. Just keep moving.
That's right. Yeah, you sound like you've been watching Dual Survivor. Oh, that's what the guy says. Do yes. Squats, Dave. Do some squats.
Oh, I love you bringing that show up. That was the best. Where he's like, "You got the crocodile," and he gets mad at him because he's the hippie, and he's like, "Hey, we gotta eat, bro." Like, yeah. So you want to just give us a little bit of your background and some context of some of the work you do, and for people that are unaware of the stuff that you do, or for the people that love it and want a refresher, just let's lay down some foundation for where you've been and where you're going.
Yeah, well, my main interests are focusing on worldview issues, and that's kind of a huge term, but it kind of is the reason why I would do things such as talk about culture and even movie reviews in terms of the worldview and the philosophy and the theology behind it, to see how they connect or how they disparage one from another. Because inevitably, the way our culture functions and the media it produces, all media, right, from news to movies, it all comes from somewhere, and it comes from a real life worldview, whether the end result is something we call fiction or fake news. It's all based on something, right? So my journey really has been just trying to understand what is truth, right? Because ultimately, in my worldview, truth is not accidental, as it is in some worldviews, such as atheism, right? By definition, in atheism, truth has to be accidental because it certainly wasn't designed or created. It just happened. Yeah, so, and then there would be no imperative to ascertain it. I mean, you could, it'd be a preference. I mean, like you might prefer one type of ice cream over another one, but there's no imperative to adhere to accidents.
Right, in that worldview, that would be sort of superimposed upon it, and it would be something that you're looking for and finding because you're looking for it. I gotcha. As opposed to it being like an edict or a dogma or a design or what have you. I got you.
Right. So, I mean, if truth was created and then we are capable of discerning it, then that's the imperative, obviously, is to discern what truth is. And so that's what takes us into many different directions. And that's kind of what happened to me throughout my life. That's as far back as I can remember. It's always been a curiosity of mine, which originally, as far back as I can actually say that I researched anything or at least read into it, it was in 6th grade when I'd go down to the local library and look at books on cryptozoology and UFOs and aliens and witchcraft and all that stuff. In the kids section, of course.
Oh yeah, the forbidden in plain sight, right? Right.
Yeah. Yes, and some of the younger people might not know what a library is. It's the building that contains these things called books.
Tomes, grimoires, indeed.
Yeah, I gotta sound like an old fogey, Back in my day, by golly,
we had hard copies. Yeah, you had to go places and see people, and they weren't sick. Some people were running around and getting together and stuff, and yeah, it's crazy. I know. The world before.
I'm sure it's always been like that, though. Some old geezer back in the day. You crazy kids with your fancy papyrus scrolls. I like a good cuneiform clay tablet in my hand,
Sure. We're gonna be those guys. Like we used to use the wedge, and now you use the flowing script. Yeah. Oh yeah, some scholar humor.
Actually, yeah. Well, the thing is, Moses was the first person in history to download data from a to a tablet from a cloud.
Right,
So
right.
that's the kind of technology we're talking about, you know.
Ah, nothing new under the sun, for sure. Yeah, that actually brings us back to something I had referenced that you said that you weren't so sure about, which was the mana machine, which is definitely the kind of stuff that dovetails with all the kind of subjects we're talking about here. Because during Exodus, and I'm glad to have you as a guest, because this is perfect, because you've done all this like exhaustive research. You've read the tomes, like you said. There used to be a library. People used to go there and research things. And I'm like the Eddie Bravo guy who's like, I've watched a lot of YouTube. But it's been like a decade, and I've like retained it, but I didn't take
Mm.
notes. So it's just kind of like this like tumbleweed in my head, where I'm kind of starting to see some sort of bigger picture. But
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, for sure. There's a, like you said, an agenda. Information and themes don't come out of nowhere. There's always somewhere it's coming from and somewhere it's going.
Right.
And it's, kind of like when you make a video or a show like this, even, where people kind of say, what is it you want the audience to do afterwards? What do you want them to feel? How do you want them to react? What do you want them to say? Oh, I need to go and do ABC. Usually it's to buy a product and, manipulate you into taking all your coin, kind of thing, which is, that's just industry, that's how it is. But all too often, as you make the point, there is kind of I don't want to say insidious, but there is definitely a hidden undertone that is this kind of concurrent under theme of all these things. And usually it's kind of anti-human, anti-natalist, and there's this like almost dark kind of Borg, like become the machine kind of thing. So I would love to hear you talk more about that, for sure. Kind of
Well,
to
in
tie that
terms
back
of,
in. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to quote J.P. Morgan, who said, "There's two reasons for whatever a man does. There's a good reason, and there's the real reason."
Right. You got the PR and the surface, and then what's
Exactly,
actually going
and that's
on.
huge. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, to kind of tie back what I was just saying there, back in the past to the current stuff. Yeah, the Mono Machine was when they were in Exodus after leaving Egypt. They were in the wilderness. Well, not really wilderness, I suppose. The wasteland, really, the desert, for what was it, 80 years, and I've definitely heard some strange accounts where there's supposedly even a blueprint of this mana machine, and it's what they survived off of. It said something that, that God or the machine rained down this mana, which is where we get our, current day, Dungeons and Dragons, like your wizard has the mana or whatever. And I guess that's
Oh
supposed to be
yeah.
where that's from, which I didn't even know that. I thought that was a pretty cool reference, but that's what they supposedly survived in the desert on. So, whether that was like the ET or the God, or what this agenda is, to me is really intriguing, because it definitely is all related. Whether it's the same thing or not, now I'm not sure about that, but there definitely seems to be a long line of people that are aware of this stuff and are kind of keeping it suppressed. And we're just all the people that, like you said, we see in a movie and we're left to believe it's just entertainment, but maybe they're actually revealing kind of a false soft disclosure kind of thing, as those people say. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, I mean, starting from where you just ended, yeah, there are definitely a lot of movies, and it's up to us to kind of attempt to figure out, is it just imagination? Are they revealing something? And if they are they revealing something true or something false? And that's where it gets really difficult. I mean, so I've never heard of a concept of a mana machine. Uh, the text of the Bible tells us that in the morning it would be dewy, and then it would leave behind this stuff that they called manna.
Hmm.
And the thing is, 6 days per week it would be produced, but on the sixth day it would produce twice as much, because then the following day would be the Sabbath, and then you couldn't go out and gather it. So that's interesting. But no, I'm not aware of any descriptions of anything beyond that it would be dewy and then it would leave behind a manna. So
Okay.
I'd be interested to see where that came from. I would, if I had to go off the top of my head, that's probably something that came from Zechariah Sitchin. And I know, like you were talking about back in the day, you watched all these YouTube videos, but Me too with Sitchin. I know I read 10 or 11 of his books, but I mean, that was probably during the 90s. But it definitely sounds like something he would he would have claimed.
I see what you're saying there. Yeah, it's definitely in that theme of there'll be somebody like such. I'm glad you brought that up because I've always kind of joked about that. It's a bit like the what's his name, Joseph Smith, I believe, the Mormon guy who's like, only I
Or
can read
yeah,
the tablets, guys. So you're just gonna
yeah,
have to
right,
believe me and buy the book.
right.
And you're kind of like, man, this is a pretty tight marketing setup you got here, bro. Like, it's
Right.
unquestionable. You have to take his word for it. Oh, nobody else can read the scripts, and I respect that if
Well,
that's
nobody
true,
else
but
can even see them now, right? Nobody else could
exactly
have read them then. Nobody else can see them now because we don't know where they are.
right.
You know, it reminds me of the claim by alleged UFO alien contactee Billy Meyer, who says, "Hey, I found this ancient manuscript. Somebody was with me. Unfortunately, he got killed. So now you got to take my word for it. The manuscripts got destroyed, but not before I translated them. So I guess you gotta have to go by what I say now."
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
There's a
well,
lot of that. Yep, everything with a
convenient.
grain of salt. Yeah, healthy skepticism. It's fun to look into
Yeah,
this stuff, but people go off the rails and they just start taking. They kind of create this feedback loop of if the first thing was based off of belief, then you can't then jump to if A is on not solid ground, not solid footing, and you haven't even proven A, then therefore to go from A to B is a complete fallacy because you haven't even proven A, which is oversimplifying it. But that's what people do. They hear some hearsay thing and then now I'm going to do the research in this thing, but it's launching from some completely incredible origin. So I definitely like
and I
your
can't.
oh, go ahead. I just like how you debunk
Yeah,
stuff.
we really can't overemphasize how important what you just said is. It is absolutely key, and I deal with that all the time, where I'm saying like, wait a minute, you're beginning a discussion with me somewhere in the middle. Look, let's get there. Maybe we'll get there at a certain point, but let's back up. We got to establish a foundation, a premise. We got to start by defining terms, know what we both mean when we both use these words. What is it we're even talking about? And then go step by step by step. And a lot of people just don't want to do that, frankly. I've had a kind of experience with all sorts of people. With atheists, definitely, because they want to start raining down fire and brimstone condemnations. And I'm like, wait a minute, wait a minute. Where's your premise to condemn anything in a universe where there's no universal imperatives? Or even then, when I'm dealing with issues of aliens and UFOs, it's like, wait. Let's define those terms, because what you mean by alien or UFO could be really vastly different than from what I mean. And so, how could we even discuss these things without starting either in a point of agreement or even disagreement? I mean, if you and I mean different things by it, that's okay, fine. But at least we understand that, and we understand the definitions of the terms we're using. So then, as we progress, we have that in place already. Instead of you're a dum dum because you don't agree with me on this. Well, how do you even know that yet?
No, that's a
Just
great
because
point.
I might have used a word, right?
Right,
A
it gets
word
ad
that's,
hominem really quick
yeah.
indeed because people
Oh,
are
yeah.
they're so invested in whatever camp, like you said with the
Yes.
atheism, because it's their world view too. You're not really just casually intellectually debating someone. Well, you or I may be, or anybody that's endeavoring to do that may start from, like you said, a true foundation. But the people that are so deeply entrenched, for them, they feel as though you're attacking what they hold dear, kind of thing, as opposed to just two people saying, hey, neither of us are sure, but here's what you've researched and what you've seen. Let's compare it honestly to what I've done. And then that's what there should be, a pursuit of that truth of, everyone says, like you kind of said, there's why people do something and then there's the real reason. Same kind of thing. There's three sides to every story, which is his side, their side, and then the truth at the top, which is somewhere between. Like that's why cops always got to split people up and interrogate
Yes.
everybody to get, you know, because
Right.
you're getting two different versions and you're like, well, here's the
Right.
one thing I consistently heard in both things, so I'm going to go with that, like, for sure. And there's not enough of that. There's like you said, there's a lot of people just writing someone off because, you know, they might have some amazing thesis, but then, oh, they started out with this one thing that just really clashes with my theory. And that's, to me, that's just kind of everyone almost kind of trying to get like clout or something for reinventing the wheel, as opposed to being more of a think tank and just working together to discover what we should all seek, which is, like you said, like a universal agreeable truth, and not an absolute, you know, we're all going to have our different, you know, faith and our different perceptions, but it's almost as though it's not, like you said, it's not a real conversation, when it's almost like two different conversations. And then that's where so much of the
Right.
chafing is coming across, because
It is.
we're not even talking about the same thing necessarily. And yet there's like these language issues where we're using the same word that'll have multiple meanings. And so we're arguing different points about different things. And
Yes.
then there's just all this frustration. And what's funny about that is it would almost seem to, I'm sure you've come across this, as you kind of mentioned, it would almost seem as though there's kind of like a built-in design to some of this stuff where people are kept ignorant and there's a lot of misinformation put out there, like you were saying with the films. There's this dangerous blending of truth and misinformation, and that's almost kind of like when your kid doesn't want to take the pill and you gotta give them the sugar cookie and you gotta hide it in there. They're like, oh, sugar cookie, and then, oh, there's that pill. And because they're not thinking about the negative experience anymore, because it's
Yeah.
overwritten by the, oh, cookie. Well, that's us with the movies, like, oh, it's aliens, that's kind of creepy. Oh, but look at the explosions and the action and then the love scene, and like, never mind the and get the implant, you know. And you see something over and over again, especially when you stop watching the movies like I have. Then you see an advertisement, and once it becomes no longer kind of matter of course and normal to you, once you're not numb to it and you become like normal and you think your own thoughts, you see the advertisements and it's so overt, you're just like, wow, this is just like a advertisement, a commercial for transhumanism, essentially, just all the different
Yeah.
flavors and levels of it. And it's all like chipping away at your human, not even just privacy, but like your individuality. It's really kind of scary to see, because these were, you know, us growing up, it was like the Philip K. Dick and the, you know, the movies that were based off of that, like Blade Runner and all the stuff we're seeing now, like
Mm.
Cyberpunk. And these were all kind of like warnings, like, you know, Orwell and Huxley, they were like, hey, this is how things could go. And, you know, now we got these people that are running everything, you know, taking notes like, oh, you could control them how now? Oh, just lock them down, you say? Oh, fascinating. Like, but here we are, you know, doing the best we can, keeping our spirits high. And all we can really do is kind of like reverse engineer some of the predictive programming stuff, just to have like any heads up of what's coming down, you know, on the horizon. And it's looking like some like, you know, the Terminator stuff. So hopefully we can get our ducks in a row here and, like, you know, I don't know, prepare for the end or something. But yeah, it's always good to have people like you, for sure, you know, kind of being a watchdog on the stuff, because, you know, a few years ago, a lot of people just wrote all this stuff off. Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist and you're making these connections where there are none. And, you know, by the beginning of this year, people were kind of, oh, what was that link? You want to go and send me that link to that documentary again? And by the end of the year, people are just like, where are we gonna go? And like, oh, now I know some stuff, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I thought it was the conspiracy theorist guy, but yeah, I think anyone who really looks can see the patterns forming. And that's I guess what gets kind of scary is, it's like those stories, like the body snatchers or whatever, where you're like the last, you know, sentient, like, not alien invaded person, and you're looking for somebody else, and you can see each other across the crowded room, but you know that you can't, like, give away that you're, yes, yeah, those, exactly, that's where we are, where it's like you have to, like, do like the coded, like, are you not one of them? And then they have to, like, be like, you know, like, we can't just, like, come right out and say, like, hey, this is fake or this is an agenda. Like, you have to, like, speak in weird code now, like the algorithms and stuff, you know, they'll pick it up if you just, like, even hint at
Yeah.
the truth. You have to, like, use code words. It's getting so goofy, but I think that we're seeing the real thing happen. I think, I've heard some crazy stuff too, where people even say that like a lot of this stuff, even if there's a real, you know what I mean? Even if that's real, which I think, sure, maybe it is, but the way it's been blown out, is obviously like a, Agenda 21, NWO type stuff. But I've heard other people say, kind of like what we were just referencing with the body snatchers, that it's like, well, if they just all put masks on, you won't know who's not human. I'm just like, nope. I'm not even gonna explore the like Lovecraftian terror of like, you've already been like, half of the humans aren't humans, man. I'm just like, okay, no, I'm just gonna hit the books and try to figure out this ancient stuff that's coming back around. I guess that's what's crazy is you probably know more better than a lot of people that this stuff has been predictive programming now with the movies and that sells. But I mean, if you do your research like you've done, it's kind of been before films. It was in books. It was in religious texts. It was in wall scrolls and stuff. Particularly the thing I saw, the orbs or whatever. I'd always heard that come up pretty concurrently in all of these kind of themes, but it's seeming to be more of a prevalent thing than I ever realized. And it crosses many faiths, like the Irish, the fairies, and all this kind of stuff. And I think people are just trying to describe like whatever this stuff is, but it definitely seems connected to a lot of the research you've done. Where, what was the name of the Ashed, I believe, the recent Israel former head of the space chief there, had just come out, hey, I got nothing to lose anymore. They told me not to say it, but I'm done. I'm old. So he came out and said, that we got aliens and stuff, and Trump's not telling you and all this. And all right, but that's kind of like the Canadian guy. Any of these guys that are up there, it's not like the guy with wearing the thing that says like the end is nigh, and he's got the bullhorn and he's on the street. It's like somebody who's got like credentials and stuff. So I don't know though, because that's what spooks me out. Like, so many of us get excited, like, you see, he's saying it. Now we're gonna get disclosure. But instead, I just kind of see like, oh, watch out for that blue beam coming real time, like anytime soon here, because that's just like I said, you've done the research. You've already seen all sorts of stuff with Paperclip, Project Paperclip, how they brought those dudes over, Werner von Braun working with Disney and all that, and that was kind of like one of the beginnings, I think, of a lot of this stuff where I don't know how much you want to get into like any of the origins of this kind of weird like alien religion. It's almost kind of like before Scientology, these guys got together, the L. Ron Hubbard, Parsons, all these dudes, they just kind of almost wanted to reskin the old, I don't know, Satanism or what necessarily, but like the sacrifice stuff, just the weird woo-woo, like, can we summon demons to build us a temple and take us to the stars kind of stuff. And they reskinned it as like this like alien stuff. So I'd love to definitely hear you go down kind of like our friend here, Isaac Weishaupt has done. You guys have definitely, I'm glad to have you guys on as the first two guests, because this is what I've been looking for, is people that kind of grasp, the meshing here and the overlap. Because before I even saw my orb stuff, I was looking for people that understood it, and it would always be purely religious or like purely technical, like people that were just straight alien or straight demon. And it got really interesting to me when I found you guys that seemed to kind of be getting a little closer to grasping what really might be going on here, and how there's some sort of relation, and not just coming out and saying, hey, I know that it's this, because none of us do know. But the work has to be done. This is how it starts, is people just kind of starting to try to nail it down in some kind of scientific, measurable, verifiable way. So it's really been a big help, actually, to kind of take away some of the confusion for myself, and hopefully anybody else that's been out there that's even experienced or seen anything like this, because I don't know if it is spiritual strictly or if there's a spiritual element. But yeah, I definitely like to hear some of what you've researched on what the crossover is. Like, for example, the man there was the Israeli chief of the science program or the space program. So, for example, why then would they choose, this nation or that nation if ETs were contacting, or if it was, fallen angel entities, like some people say. So yeah, I definitely want to hear you get into the deep dive of kind of why we're being given that agenda, what you think kind of it could be. And I'm not trying to like, you give me your absolute answer. What's the truth? I know, like, I know that we're all just kind of trying to figure this thing out, but I'd love to hear where you kind of started with those connections, and what you kind of have gathered, and just sort of an overall, like, what you've garnered from it, I guess, because I'm kind of on the same page as you, where I'm trying to see why it's related, and what's being hidden, what's known, what's, like you said, what's truth, and not like in a kind of biased way, but in a subjective kind of way. So yes, once again, you have the floor to completely extrapolate upon all of the crazy alien demon agenda.
Well, I do have it all figured out, but since you don't want to hear it, fine.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, now I'm not ready to get my mind blown.
Let's start,
here.
How about we start with that story from Israel? It's from a news service called Yediot Haronot. And what they're talking about is former Israeli space security chief. Yeah. And Haim Ashid. And so, yeah, he's saying that we've been in touch with this supposed galactic federation. And part of what's that struck me about that story is, okay, anyone can claim whatever they want. And it's regardless of what kind of position they're in, or they have been in, or they retired from. There's all kinds of people everywhere who will claim whatever they want, right? I thought it was important to note that he's publishing a new book, and then the Israelis had attempted to land an unmanned ship on the moon, but they lost touch with it and it crashed. So they're trying to get that going again. So to me, that was more just like a PR thing to get more funding, honestly.
No, that's an honest take. I'd heard that too.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear he had a book coming out.
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
Yeah.
The plot thickens.
Yeah. The more fascinating thing I got out of that is that in Hebrew, Yedot means news, right? And that just sounds like idiot to me, Yedot. Idiot.
Okay. No, there's an etymology there for sure. I always kind of look into that
Although,
stuff.
the ot is really just makes the word plural in feminine. Yeah. Whereas in masculine, it would be im, right? Like Nephil im, Rephi im, Gibor im.
I'm glad you bring that up too, but actually.
Still, perfect. Idiot news. Aren't we living there, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I just like anything else. The guy said what he said, and let's see if it pans out. But thus far, to me, I'm not impressed.
Yes.
It's a case of follow the money in my mind, at least thus far. Now, there's something that I wanted to point out, because you talked about, is it all spiritual, like demonic? Is it all technological, like advanced aliens? Is it government? Is it some kind of combination? And I found interesting that another Israeli, actually, Yitzhak Hayatuman, some years ago, he came up with a very simple and low-tech idea. He wanted to get a hot air balloon, float it over the Temple Mount and then have the hot air balloon release like a fog machine.
Okay.
And then project a holographic temple.
Blue beam.
Right? So, yeah, I mean, it's lower tech than blue beam, but
same concept though. Yes, smoke screen projection. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
interesting.
But, so he says he wanted to do that and then just see which deity shows up.
Really?
Like, okay.
Kind of like the bat signal. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Because why have all this conflict about the plot of ground and building a third temple or whatever? Just project it holographically and see what happens.
Right?
While that is actually not Bluebeam itself, the concept is the same. You're going to project something that isn't actually there, but it's a projection, but it still carries the same type of meaning, right?
Right. With
And
the
then this guy was all wrapped up with um, Yoshi Tsuraya, who is an Orthodox Jew that was um, kind of kicked out of his community for kind of being out there. And what they wanted to do is engineer video games so that I'm trying to find the quotation right now. That's why I'm kind of stilted or stunned or stilted. What they wanted to do basically, they figured that okay, because this rabbi was into Kabbalah, all right,
Mhm.
and that's like rabbinic Judaism's mysticism. And they've talked about how magic, by any other name, is the imposition of will. Okay, so that they wanted to come up with video games where through people progress through levels in the video game, they're actually performing rituals. And to them, in their worldview, it wouldn't matter that it's just a game because you're still imposing your will, right? You're still wantingly, volitionally wanting things to happen ritualistically. So it doesn't matter that it's in a cyber realm in virtual reality in a video game. It doesn't matter. You're still doing it, you
Okay,
know?
so
And so that
you're kind
was,
of like invoking the Sephiroth and going through the different steps and learning it, and then going through the actual rituals. That's fascinating because it'd still be
yeah,
entering your mind. It would still be the spiritual exchange. I see what you're saying, because you'd be giving your free
yeah.
will over to the concepts. Okay,
I'm
interesting.
sorry. The rabbi was actually Ohed Azariah.
Okay.
Um, um, Ezrahi, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
Ohed Ezrahi, and he says, we're going to hook the players up to video feedback sensors and throw demons at them if they got angry.
Oh boy, punishment. Okay. Interactive. Okay.
Yeah, so that's just kind of a very, again, it's a video game, it's a holographic projector, and it's really low tech stuff that we're talking about, but still, it's the way that these people are talking about these things. So this report I was looking at says that Azarhi and Hayutma developed the game, some of that Kabbalism steeped in. It's still there in dozens of esoteric riddles and puzzles. Players navigate the narrow streets and bustling marketplaces trying to uncover and decipher Christian, Jewish, and Muslim scriptural clues relating to end times. They can choose to kill each other, but they won't be able to move to the next level if they do. The goal is to unlock the secrets that will induce the coming of the Messiah, whether players believe he will turn out to be the Christian Jesus, the Jewish Mashiach, or the Muslim Mahdi, right? What do they care? As long as somebody shows up.
I'm so glad that you brought that point to kind of segue
Oh
into what I was going
man.
to reference. I was going to ask you what you thought of people kind of theorizing that there does seem to be this like almost kind of a push for manifesting prophecy, kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing. Like if we just push the dominoes and we create the catalyst and the things happen, then the Mashiach will absolutely come because he'll have to. Like you said, almost like the bat signal. If we light the candle, then they'll see the message and
Yeah.
they will come. If we make enough suffering, if we just make enough suffering, and I just don't understand that.
Okay.
Like if we make
That's
war,
yeah.
then
Yeah.
that'll be
Okay.
the apocalypse. Like I don't know, man.
Yeah. Oh man. There's oof, okay. You got my brain just going in a million directions. So
Good.
I feel like I didn't even really answer what you asked me to talk about just now. So we're gonna have to get back to it. But
Right. Okay.
since you
That's
brought
cool.
that up, okay. Okay. So let's work our way backwards a little bit. One of the hottest guys in ufology right now is Greer, right? Dr.
Oh,
Greer.
yes. Okay, man, we're covering
Okay.
everything tonight.
Yeah, and so okay, here's one thing. You're listening to him, and he's talking about how he's got all these documents from the government. Okay, great. You know, that's an important disclosure. And he's been briefed by government officials, and he has briefed government officials, and
Hmm.
he's talking about clean energy. And you're like, right on, man. This is a really good, important stuff. Let's go. And all of a sudden, he's like, and you know, you can join with me and a bunch of my Greerites, and you can go through an occult initiation to perform rituals to summon aliens. Like, well, huh? What just, huh?
But free energy, you just gotta summon them, and trade your soul for some free energy. No big deal. I mean, what are
Yeah,
you?
it's just
You're
a
making it
little
weird, man.
Faustian bargain. Come on, you know. But
it's
see,
it's
that's like
renewable. You don't like renewable energy, bro?
the renewable energy is your soul.
There it is. It's a cycle,
But see, this is what you're talking about, right? It's the act of summoning now. It's not
Absolutely.
just let's read documents about what other people say. It's not about, I don't see anything right now, but maybe. It's like, no, we're going to make this happen. We're going to cause contact. Okay. So then um, jumping back through history to a man named Shabtai Tzvi. Okay. He is one of the many people throughout Jewish history who has claimed to be the Messiah. And if you hear about the Shabbatinians, right, that's where they got their name, or Shabtai Tzvi. One thing he talked about is how in the Talmud Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud, it says that the Messiah would return in a generation that is either altogether righteous or altogether wicked. So he figured, okay, I really don't foresee a generation that's going to be altogether righteous. But hey, maybe we can cause a generation that is altogether wicked. So he and his followers set out to perform every conceivable sin you could think of, and some you probably couldn't think of, uh, to be as wicked as humanly possible, under the guise of we're doing it for the good, because this way the Messiah will come and save us. That's how twisted it is. But this is where you get these concepts of, like Aleister Crowley later on in history would talk about, that vice is virtue, that the reason he was doing so many unmentionable things was because vice was virtue. And by doing these things, right, you're causing chaos and collapse until somebody has to come along and clean it all up, right? The Frankists actually followed the Sabbateans, but then you can just move forward on through history, and you end up with people like Crowley, who basically, if he would have lived on into the 60s, he would have seen exactly what he had been preaching all along. You know, a total collapse of ethics, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You know, and along with that, a convenient destruction of the family, easy divorce,
Do as thou wilt,
abortion,
indeed.
just,
Yep.
yeah, I
Yep.
mean, everything was there. But that's how misguided and deceived these people are. That, okay, so this actually shows us that there's a true, absolute, universal ethos, right? A true ethic that they can't even say, let's just do evil for the hell of it, literally. They have to kind of philosophize themselves into an excuse. We're actually doing evil for good, right? In other words, they can't escape the ethos because it's absolutely universal. So they have to kind of work their way into pretending that they're a part of it, or that they're enacting it, when of course they're not. But this is what you see in so many cultures, even Hitler and his henchmen having to spend so many years talking the German people into, this is why it's okay that we're going to do what we're going to do. This is why it's okay, not shut up, you know, not we're going to do it because we feel like it, but we have reasons which are really excuses. You know, there's a fine line between a reason and an excuse. But this is why, because they have to get beyond this ethos that God put within us, that's administered by our consciousness. So you have to kind of get beyond that somehow. So anyhow, this is why they would fall for that sort of thing. And then we end up with, all these people trying to make contact with whatever Greer might mean by the word aliens, or in the case of this holographic third temple, whoever shows up, who cares? Just as long as somebody shows up, that's kind of above us, above humans. So then you get into, so this stuff about contact, and who is involved in that? Well, this gets us back to the thing I mentioned earlier, which is, well, what do we mean by aliens and UFOs, right? And let me just spend a minute or two on that. So if I say, let's talk about aliens and UFOs, I've already created a huge mess right there. Because there's people who claim they've seen UFOs, but never seen an alien. And there's people who claim to have seen an alien or have communication with them, but they've never seen a UFO. So that's two categories right there. That's two separate categories. But then there's people who claim, well, I've had experience with both. Okay, so that's a third main category, right? So then under the UFO category, you got to still talk about, what does that mean? I mean, by definition, it's unidentified. Okay, so one subcategory is you saw something in the sky, but you don't know what it is, period. Okay, there it is. It's a mystery. Another would be, I saw something in the sky and, it was a craft. It was a nuts and bolts craft. It looked metallic. You know, it could do this, it could do that. But okay, you may still not know what it is, but you identify it as a craft. And then, I saw this thing and it was an orb, right? Or it was whatever. You have all these subcategories under UFO that go from ball lightning to nuts and bolts craft to, I always like to point out, people started reporting seeing black triangular spacecraft.
Mm-hmm.
But then not much later, we found out about what was then the secret high tech, which was the stealth bomber, stealth fighter, that are very triangular. Yeah. Or even Kenneth Arnold, he commissioned to have an illustration made of the craft he saw. And when you compare it to what was then the high tech, it looks almost the same. It was called the flying wing. And it's basically just the wings of an airplane with no real body. It was a flying wing. And that's almost exactly what he claims that he saw. So, okay. So then you can dig down through subcategories and subcategories, right? So one of them, would be just good old fashioned human secret high tech. Like I said, another one's orbs, another one's whatever, really unidentified. On the alien side, again, what are we talking about? Because anything that's not human or not from this earth could be an alien. If you want to use the term extraterrestrial, that's pretty simple because by definition then, angels could be extraterrestrial. God could be extraterrestrial. It's a biological entity from another planet in our solar system or beyond it. Could be an extraterrestrial or an alien, but also if they come from another dimension altogether. So really anything. That's what I'm saying. It's, what do you mean by that? Well, again, subcategory. What is it that we're talking about? And now I find it really convenient is the channelers. That's so convenient to me because they can have communication with aliens for decades and they never have to bother seeing any kind of craft or an alien for that matter. So that's always convenient. And then that gets us into how come people who claim to channel aliens and people who claim to channel dead humans have the same shtick? How come they have the same exact shtick? So that there's something really interesting there. In fact, Whitley Strieber, who for decades has been the poster boy for contact with aliens,
Mm-hmm.
he's been very hesitant all that time to talk about aliens. He calls them visitors.
Okay.
And yeah, or Greys. He'll call them Greys. He even wrote a book called The Greys. And actually, I asked him, why is it you're always talking about Greys, but the painting you had commissioned for the cover of your book Communion, how come that visitor isn't gray? And he just said, I don't know. That's just what I saw. Just another
Convenient.
one of his many inconsistencies. What can you do?
Mm-hmm.
But but his latest thing is that he suspects that the whole phenomena of communicating and experiences with grays is really a phenomena of dealing with the dead. That's what he's saying as his latest guess as to what's going on. And I think he's probably onto something closer now than he's been in many decades.
That's interesting
And
that people
so,
shift through too as they kind of try to get it going. And it's almost kind of sounds
yeah,
like a lot of times people may even experience something like I did, but a little bit of the hiccup comes when people try to nail it down more because, they're selling a book. People want, hey, this is 2 pages. This is a little bit thin. And so they're kind of like, oh, I got to give all these details. And then maybe they don't mean to embellish, but I think there is kind of a natural almost need or expectation to bolster the story. And so people do. And nobody wants to hear just the simple thing that is inexplicable by itself because they're used to films. They're used to this whole story as opposed to, hey, I can't explain this thing. What do you want? So yeah, no, you're onto something there where it shifts, but it is interesting though that people in general, I've heard that there has been a massive shift. It all started, Roswell, nuts and bolts. It was a craft. It was metal. Even if it was some sort of, weird metal that, what they say that it's like foil, it crumpled and then righted
memory,
itself,
yeah,
memory foil, memory foam kind of thing, right?
yeah.
Even if it was nuts and bolts type thing like that, that's what everyone said. And then kind of we've seen this shift where everything has become more consciousness, like you said, Greer, more spiritual, and it's interesting because like you said, it's clearly going that way, but then no one will just say, well, this is a cult or anything like that. They'll just kind of like lump it in and it'll be that, but they won't call it that. And that to me is a little bit telling.
Yeah, well, the thing, to go back to Strieber for a moment, I think he really started heading in that direction when his wife passed away.
Oh, okay.
And so, okay, but see, Strieber is, okay, one of the examples of how occultism plays into that, because his first experience with the visitors was in his meditation room. Okay, now what happens with Strieber is he always conveniently ends up having memories um, of other things. So then he'll claim, well, no, actually, I just remember this goes way back into my childhood.
Okay.
And in fact, Billy Meyer is the same. His first experience was when he was living in an ashram in India. But then, oh, guess what? Oh, yeah, that's right. This goes way, way back. And so again, you can't really get away from that. My buddy Jason Horsley, he also had some sort of experience that's similar to something Whitley Strieber would have described, and that was while he was in a Buddhist retreat. So it's like you just can't get away from it. And so Strieber is saying that he believes that when he meditates nowadays, that his wife makes contact with him. In fact, his latest book, she's a co-author, and that's posthumous. I mean, she's a co-author of the book after she passed away.
Okay.
I mean, I've heard of ghostwriting, but this is ridiculous. Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, I don't want to laugh at him really, because
No, I see.
obviously
You got to keep it light. This is heavy stuff for
yeah, yeah,
sure.
yeah. But I mean, he loved her very deeply, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously his wife passed away. But that's what he's claiming, is that, well, now I have visitations from her, and that's what made him start shifting to, oh, I think this whole thing about visitors isn't aliens like from
Mm-hmm.
another planet, but it's dead humans. It's basically a form of necromancy. Yeah.
Okay.
And now on the Billy Meyer side, what's fascinating is one of his main contacts is an alien named Semyaza.
Oh, okay. All right.
You got that? Okay, see?
Can't make it
Right.
up. You can't make
See,
this stuff up.
you can't make this up. Semyaza is the name of one of the fallen angels in the apocryphal book Ethiopic Enoch. So, wait a minute.
Let's go ahead and
And there's
remove that.
actually
Just go and take that out of the Bible. Just go and remove that out of the Bible. It says too
oh,
much.
well, yeah. Well, I mean, that's a whole other issue.
Oh, for
I
sure.
did write a whole book about that in consideration of the books of Enoch. And I do constantly ask people, what makes you think that it got taken out? Because there's a difference between not including it and taking it out. That's two different things, and nobody can ever tell me. But anyhow, the thing is, why is it that your alien contact has the, and that's not a common name, right? I don't meet
It's just a
many
working
people
code
named
name. Never mind
Semyaza.
that.
Yeah.
It's a common name. Come on. There's Azazel, you
Actually,
know.
Byron LeBeau, he's a late researcher. He passed away, but he did a lot of research into how come all these aliens have the names of ancient goddesses and gods and demons, you know, like Ashtar Command and all this stuff. He did some research into that that was really interesting. And so again, you got that going on with Strieber. You got some kind of crossover with Billy Meyer. Then you get into L. Ron Hubbard, because really Scientology is another UFO cult by any other name, because you're going along up the levels because you're interested in getting mentally and emotionally healthy. And okay, Dianetics and then Scientology, and now the Church of Scientology can help me. And all of a sudden you get to OT3 and you're like in the middle of a space opera. Wait a minute. What does this have to do with it, with anything? But that's the claim of Hubbard, is that this intergalactic warlord named Xenu brought aliens to Earth, plunked them down into volcanoes and bombed them, you know, to
To release the
smithereens.
trapped spirits or something, if I recall correctly. There was a really good
Well,
South
he
Park
was
episode
just
that depicted all of this.
it was a means of depopulation.
Oh, okay.
So he brought them here just to kill them,
Oh, nice. Okay.
just to be rid of the bodies and just, okay, I'm going to just not kill, murder. I'm going to murder a bunch of people because we got to depopulate. But the result was that, according to Scientology, the result was that their spirits then left their bodies because their bodies were blown to smithereens, and they roamed the earth, and they're called thetans. And so now that you and I are walking around on Earth, all these thetans attached to us, and that's what causes us all kinds of psychological and emotional problems, and that's what Scientology claims to be able to fix. It's kind of like a high-tech form of exorcism, really. But speaking of media, this is what you see, if you can recall, if you can remember the cover of the Dianetics book. There's a volcano on the cover.
Oh, okay.
And the thing is, it's not an erupting volcano. It's an exploding volcano. It's supposed to depict the volcano into which these aliens were thrown and then bombed, because they think that they could subconsciously, subliminally trigger a past life memory in you of that event, and that'll help you start getting you rid of these thetans that have attached themselves to you. So you see how they're using media to attempt to trigger something in you subconsciously through that. And there's other fascinating, I mean, almost every Scientology book is fascinating in its cover. I have one Dianetics book. The cover is just a dropping bomb. Who prints that in a self-help book?
Right.
But that's what it is. It's supposed to make you think, oh, here comes the bomb, you know,
Right.
from way back then. Or then I'd have another book where the cover is the boxes that contain the aliens being put into the craft. I mean, oh, this
Transported and
just right
shipped around.
there.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
What
and
the
so that's
crisis.
another. And then you do end up with L. Ron Hubbard teaming up with Jack Parsons, who of
Oh
course is
yeah.
famous for his rocketry as well as his occultism.
Mm-hmm.
And they're running around doing all these crazy rituals. And even though Crowley thought that they were a bunch of numbskulls, they were still out there doing what they were doing. You know, they were trying to create the homunculus, the moon child, through the Scarlet Woman, the Whore of
Right.
Babylon. I mean, they're like, this is the guy you want coming up with quote unquote technology to tinker around with your brain and soul and all
Right.
that, you know.
Oh boy, they wanted to have the vessel for the entity to
Yeah,
inhabit. Okay, do the ritual and create the rift in the dimension. A little bit like some of the crazy stuff I've heard about CERN and the Large Hadron Collider and all that jazz. And I thought that was pretty silly without seeing the context until some people showed me some videos of like the ritual with the Shiva doing the dance and the statue, and then they had the robes and
yeah.
the mock ritual outside of the facility there, and I was kind of like,
A
okay, well, man,
tunnel,
this is a
yeah,
little bit different here, or the tunnel, yeah, with the goat head dance
yeah.
guy, and it's like, okay, I mean, this is okay, that's a little bit weird. I had
I
to.
mean, so ufology and occultism are, yeah, they are. It's so difficult to think that one of them is not connected to the other somehow in some way. It's almost inevitable, even if an individual person says, hey, you know, I had contact with an alien, I'm not into any of that occult stuff. Inevitably something will somehow be there. In almost every case I've looked at, especially the well-known ones. It's insane. It's inevitable. The correlate, just like I said, Dr. Greer, on the one hand, straight up, hey, I'm a doctor, I talk to government people, I'm looking at documents, and boom. But now you can conduct rituals to summon them. It's like, dude, okay, there it is, right? You might have never thought that of someone like Dr. Greer. If you watch the presentations where he's talking about documents and he's talking about energy issues, you're like, yeah, right on, amen, brother, you know. And then all of a sudden, kaboom, okay, there it is. There it is. I mean, you might have never thought that, but there it is.
Yeah, that definitely ties into the kind of spiritual bent. A lot of people talk about, like how we were talking about, going to cover in a minute here, the kind of almost manifested prophecy, manifested end times kind of thing, like create the conditions and then the thing will happen because the catalyst. It's a bit like that where people are kind of trying to create this dynamic, and I don't know. It's a bit weird to me that it's not being described in that way. That there's not the. I don't want to say that it's dishonest or deceptive, because it almost kind of seems like there is a deceptive element to the information already, and these people are just kind of echoing the deception without realizing they've been deceived. So I don't know if that's an apt description, because I think that on the other hand, I think there's plenty of people, some high up cats involved in this stuff that know full well. And that's, I guess, what gets kind of a little bit creepy to me, is that there is kind of a handshake at some point, like what was it, the Eisenhower thing, where people said that they agreed to do experiments on humans, essentially genetically, for the exchange of the technology. Uh, that to me sounds about right. If you look at everything else that we get the short end of the deal with most governments in history, it's they don't care. They want the bomb. They want the 2-second light speed technology stuff, and you got to crack a few omelets to make an egg. I mean, hey, we're the rulers, we decide. That's kind of the story that I've always seen. So to me, it's a little bit sketchy that now suddenly, like, oh, we're going to be enlightened and all this and we can summon them, but I don't know. That's again, like you say, it's kind of convenient when you really look at all the elements involved. It's spooky, and there's an exchange there. You always have to ask yourself, like with anything, like you said, you follow the money. You look at the intent. Why did somebody really do this? What was the end goal? What was the gain? Like qui bono or whatever, qui bono, like who gains the phrase. Uh, Same kind of thing. Why would these people really be doing this? What do they stand to gain from the aliens, or whatever that means, again, like you said, or better
Right.
yet, the question that less people ask is, if they're so advanced, what do they need from us? Like if we're so pure and to be left alone, then you would like Star Trek, the underdeveloped planet kind of thing. It's like, they don't have these weapons, they haven't reached that yet. It would be irresponsible of us to bestow the nuke upon caveman kind of thing, or where we're at now. Even we still don't have the responsibility or the kind of decency to not use lethal technology. But that's what I would kind of ask is, what kind of resource are we if they're coming to us? And then a lot of people write that off because if they're so advanced, in the nuts and bolts kind of older theory, then we don't have anything to offer other than, say, raw resources, minerals, the planet, or something like that. But when you then analyze this under the lens of the kind of more spiritual dimensional stuff, now you're kind of talking more of like, well, are our souls some sort of asset, some sort of resource? Is that what's being harvested or being duped away? And and I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm secular. I definitely am open to all this stuff. I'm not even agnostic. I think that's even closer to being atheist. I know for certain there's something, I just don't know what the hell it is, and I'm just trying to trying to kind of unravel the mystery. And so I definitely appreciate any of you guys doing the decades of research, because you have to, once you just start at the rabbit hole with this stuff, there's just so many avenues, and you don't even realize how connected all of it is until you start to kind of get down that bit of research with each thing. And then you kind of start to see like, okay, who was the head of this program? Oh, gee, another guy that was in that same exact literal cult. Oh, he was literally friends with the same guy. Oh, they literally went to the same place. And then you kind of finally start to see like, oh, is this just a bunch of weird like demon summoning stuff? And it basically is. It's so bizarre. Like you try to, like, if somebody asks you, well, what's the real deal, and you're like, well, if I just tell you the end, it's not gonna make sense to you. Like well, hit me, what do you got? And you're like, okay, well, they're summoning demons and trying to steal our souls and put us in robot bodies so that and they're like, whoa, and you're like, hey man, I told you wouldn't grasp it yet. It's some really out there stuff, and it's not even really as much of a theory as it used to be. The more we see I want to say it's every week, there's something as a headline that's just some sort of implementation where it goes from being, like I said, the 80s, fantasy stuff and a warning, to here we are with, like, what was the new one I just saw that's one more thing, the technology where they can beam the sound or something like that, where you can have
voice to skull.
That's what it used to be called for a long time. That was the conspiracy, the title of the program, or the technology. And now just a couple weeks ago, I believe it was an Israeli technological firm that released it, and it didn't seem like it even made that big of a splash. I thought that everybody would be talking about it. People would be like doing videos of cutting their headphones, or they're just some cheap, gimmicky, silly thing. But no, it's just a little commercial bloop. Nobody really talked about it, and I thought it would be like a consumer thing. But you, I'm sure, and many others know what could be done with that, and I thought for sure that alone would be getting people to talk about how you could just combine this with Bluebeam. You got Soundbeam is what I guess I would call it. Soundbeam, Bluebeam. You have a full created, curated experience. Like, I'm sure you are aware of this, the Bluebeam thing gets deep, where, basically it's tailor-made to this nation, this faith. You want to see, Muhammad in the sky, or you want to see Christ in the sky, or you want to see Shiva. Like, it's going to be whatever has that impact upon those people. And that to me is kind of the running theme of all of this, is like you said, why do they always have these same names if it's this alien? So I definitely want to come back to what you're saying there, because that's really intriguing to me, that people don't ask these questions, and that they just kind of shrug it off. They're so gung-ho and ready for the alien stuff, but then they don't ask why, for example, the recent thing he said, the space chief said that, they don't want to be revealed. Well, why? Because as soon as he said they don't want to be revealed, and they said something else, that we will understand what space and spaceships are, I thought that was a really strange thing to say, because that kind of goes with some of the stuff that you've covered. All it made me think of was the old book, Arthur C. Clarke, the Childhood's End, where the demon is like, well, you got to understand, I look kind of scary. And the guy's like, I mean, you're right, we can't show you yet. And it's like, well, just do the plan, stick to the plan, trust the plan. Says the devil guy, the space devil. Like, and you have to wonder where some of these tropes come from, because it's almost like we might have it backwards. Like, maybe we've been warned of something before, and there was no way to kind of get people to continue the record without the narrative of the story. And I don't know, I guess that kind of sounds blasphemous, like, if you're just almost writing it off like, oh, it's all a metaphor, because I know a lot of people like to do that are the more secular views. Oh, well, what they meant was the ancient aliens thing. Well, it was a ship, even though they described it in detail as something that wasn't nuts and bolts. And like, okay, dude, whatever. I mean, that's your theory. Like, I think that people definitely need to open up to the kind of weird union where it's like, we don't understand. We see three dimensions. We barely understand like the fourth dimension of time. We see a limited, even with the vision that we see a limited spectrum of light of what we could even see if our eyes work differently. And that's just, we don't even see all of one of the dimensions of our, perceived reality. So to me, the whole dimension thing is kind of like a misnomer, because we don't even know, there's no way to talk about something that we don't even know the reality of. And so we're kind of going back to what you said earlier, is that we don't even have the definition of the term. So of course there's no progress made on understanding it, because we need to create that foundation of at least whatever we do understand, because we're not going to grasp the whole thing. What's something we can agree upon? Like, almost like, what is it not? Then, and not enough people really do that. Like, and they don't question these things as far as like motives. It's that's why I look, why is this all being pushed so much? And that's what's been creeping me out, because it's everywhere. It's in everything. And I remember, having experiences, or even just being into this stuff as kind of an entertainment kind of thing. People weren't that into it not that long ago. People talk about that, how it was just exactly, it was lumped in with the conspiracy stuff. It was like, oh, you believe that? No. I would tell people, I'm curious about this. Don't you think this is interesting that a lot of people claim to have seen something? Maybe they're misunderstanding, but there's definitely something happening here. Well, now fast forward to 2020, and it's just, you'd be less likely to find someone that doesn't believe in it. And for that rapid shift, to me, that's like some effective predictive programming, brainwashing stuff, because people did not like it before. It creeped people out. People thought you were crazy. They didn't even want to talk to you. Like, if you said something that even hinted that you were even curious about the alien stuff or ET or any of it, people, discredited your other thoughts then by proxy, kind of thing. And that's just not the case anymore. Now people, like you said, they're summoning them. And I think that's a little bit like Hawking and his warnings, Stephen Hawking, or the dark forest theory, where we're sending the gold record with like, here's my address, and we're like doxing ourselves like on the galactic cosmic internet, like, hey guys, here's my cute photo, hope nothing happens, hope you aliens aren't going to come and probe me or nothing. Like, we don't really know who's the alien on the other end. Like, oh, humans, these ignorant humans, like, yeah, be there soon guys, warp drive engaged. Like, I don't know. It's to me, there's a really spooky spiritual thing here that people are overlooking. The more it gets pushed, the more I'm really suspicious, for sure. Because it's great you brought up the Greer stuff, because it kind of like, we kind of covered some of the biblical stuff and then the modern stuff and how things are kind of repackaged and rebranded. Yeah, the Greer stuff, I had already looked into some of that, naturally, as it kind of covers some of this. And, like you said, oh, he's legitimate, or appears to be legitimate as being, given briefings and himself giving other people briefings. But I was a little bit familiar with that. But then after I posted my whole orb thing that I saw, coming out of the trees and all, people were reaching out to me, being like, oh, you gotta talk to Greer. That's the guy. I'm like, oh, okay. Sure, maybe so. I don't know if he's going to talk to some random, could be making it up for all he knows, because I don't have his credentials, right? I could make it up, like, random guy. He's got no reason to go off of that. But it got weirder, though, because I think I mentioned in my talk with Isaac that they had reached out to me in my comments on the video, and oh yeah, we summoned them. Like, we actually held one of our powwows the same day or around the same day or something. So there was no doubt. They weren't like, perhaps it could be related in kind of the fun way. No, it was just absolutely like, so when are you meeting up? Because you are the golden child and the aliens have chosen you. I'm just like, okay, all right. all right, dude, this is too much for me. But I mean, I had definitely had an experience back in the '90s that could preface all this, that, you know, possible abduction kind of thing. But that's what's so kind of tiresome when you look into this kind of stuff, is especially if you legitimately have had some sort of you know, like footage like I had, or encounter like I had. You know, I never ran around telling people I was abducted or aliens are real, because just right from the get-go, I don't know. I'm not going to claim to know. I know something strange happened to me. It proves that there is something else, but I'm not going to jump to any conclusion. And that's the problem, is when you try to find other researchers, most of the time, you know, it's somebody who's like written some books or maybe done some talks or whatever. But usually it's kind of like what we initially said. It's based off of like an entire expanded work from that central point of, you know, hearsay. Or, you know, a lot of the people that get really into it are just that, they're into it. They haven't even experienced anything or seen anything, and they almost want to. And to me, that's kind of an intellectual issue, because they're so passionately looking for something, as opposed to subjectively kind of saying like, hey, is this a thing? You know, so they see something that looks like even potentially a lead. Oh, I finally have the proof. I finally have the facts. And that to me is, you know, it really clouds their judgment when measuring, you know, a third party source that, you know, might be just a hoax kind of thing. So yeah, it gets
Yeah,
tough to look
yeah.
to people.
Let's pause here a second.
Oh yeah, sorry, bro.
No, just so we can kind of try to process everything that you've been talking about, and maybe dig into a couple of details on it. Because the voice to skull thing, I mean, gosh, you can look at advertisement videos on YouTube right now, and it's pretty cool, actually. It's a technology that doesn't send sound waves into your ear. It's the vibrations off of your skull bones.
Okay.
So, yeah, so then you can hear something that a person 2 feet away can't hear.
Right.
So, for instance, in the commercials, you'll see that there's people on a dance floor and they can hear the music, they're dancing around. But then there's tables, people eating dinner around the dance floor, and it's perfectly quiet there.
Okay.
So, see what I mean? If you're on the dance floor, then those vibrations are reverberating in your skull and you can hear the music. But then someone sitting 5 feet away from you trying to have a conversation over dinner can do so because they're not hearing it.
Right. It's
So
like a
in that
passive.
sense,
Right. Okay.
yeah, it's pretty cool technology in that sense. And there's also been advertisements where like there's a billboard, and if you're on the sidewalk, you can hear the advertisement on the billboard. But if you're walking next to that person on the street, you can't hear it. The issue is it gets you into people who talk about receiving messages from, you name it, the dead, from aliens, from whoever, the demons, you know, and how much of it is just this pretty basic technology where the person maybe laying next to them in bed isn't hearing anything, right? And how easy it is for this to become a means of deception. So you combine that with, again, sights in the sky, holographic or blue beam, however you want to term it, and you have the makings of something very deceptive. And if you are playing around with the concept of aliens, that has a potential of really cutting through almost every worldview. Because, I mean, if you flat out deny aliens, maybe it won't take you much to go, oh, there they are right there. Okay, I was wrong. Next. You know, it won't be that big a deal. Maybe for some people it will, because they'll just refuse to see what's before their eyes, because some of us know that there's things that are more true than what's before our eyes. But then, in fact, I was just listening to a talk by the atheist Michael Shermer today, and he's referring to atheists as gods for the atheist. I mean, referring to aliens as potential gods for atheists or
Creator. Right.
skeptics.
Okay.
Right, because if you're an atheist, what's higher than humanity? Well, it'd have to be an alien, and they're more advanced, and
Evolution,
therefore,
technology. Right.
yeah. And So, in fact, in my book, 50 Shades of Gray Aliens, I had a whole chapter titled Ancient Atheist Aliens, about how many atheists are just going nuts talking about aliens. And it seems to me that's why. And because also the more evidence that comes in that this universe and we humans are designed, well, they don't want to attribute it to God, so it must be aliens. Okay. And so potentially that has the ability to cut through everything and everyone. And there's also an aspect of the progression of these claims, so that the alien claims and even their manner of speech and technology seem to progress along with what our idea of the future is like. So if you go back to L. Ron Hubbard and his description of the whole Xenu scenario, he talks about the Xenu's alien craft as looking just like DC-8s airplanes, DC-8s. And it's like nobody would ever make such a cheesy claim today, right? That these aliens from another planet build a flying craft that should look just like our airplanes. Come on, no one's going to do that. But that was kind of the high tech of that day. So he just kind of said, yeah, they're just like the high tech of our day. It's the high tech of that they have, right? And so it's this similar with the claim that early aliens claimed that they're from other planets in our solar system. Well, but then we got better at exploring our solar system, and then they claimed, okay, we're actually from farther than your solar system, and then farther and farther and farther. And nowadays it's like, yeah, now we've kind of figured out that space travel would be tremendously difficult for many, many reasons, including, God forbid, you're traveling at a gajillion miles an hour and you hit a tiny little asteroid, and it's stuff like that. And so, guess what? We're actually from another dimension. That just kind of makes it easier.
Now you just can't reach it. Don't look for it.
Yeah.
Don't question it. Right?
It's so convenient, And now, in my mind, I always like to start at a very basic common sense level. And it's like, okay, we know about secret technology that governments are working on. Sometimes they end up being revealed to us and sometimes they don't. We know that. Okay, so that's pretty simple place to start. So we know that there are things people have seen in the sky that are just human technology. It was just not known at the time. And at least it has been reported that there's relatively low-tech kind of ways to make people have experiences that they would later go on to describe as paranormal or ufological, right? We know that voice to skull, mind control experimentation. In fact, Whitley Strieber's right in the middle of that because he claims to be a victim of MK Ultra mind control experimentation.
Oh.
He himself came out with that. He claims that. And it's like, okay, well, that would definitely explain a lot.
Yeah, you think he would question everything then? Like, is this just like an implanted memory?
But it's almost like he's so bought into it by that time.
It's no fun anymore, right? And that's no fun to question it. Yeah.
What he says is that he recognizes he's been MK Ultra experimenting on mind control.
Okay.
But that his experience with the visitors are true because he says people who would run into him on days that he had experiences with the visitors would point out that he was agitated. So to him, that was enough to get him convinced that, yeah, okay, so that was a real experience. Whereas I'm thinking, well, if you underwent a session of mind control experimentation, including hypnosis or maybe even traumatic torture, that would definitely make you agitated. Yeah, that would definitely do it. But the thing is, when you start kind of unpacking the sorts of things he's saying, so for instance, he talks about how these visitors, the Greys, recognized he was really freaked out by their big black eyes. Mm-hmm. So he says, and one of them one time appeared to him wearing those ridiculously large plastic sunglasses, you know those?
Okay.
Yeah, and kind of to show them, oh, come on, it's not such a big deal. And I'm thinking, well, but that's the kind of thing that some guy at the CIA or some university would be doing to you if they had you in a hypnotic state. And what they wanted you to remember is not the features of a human face, but what you would instantly remember is, oh, big black eyes, to the point where the face is basically obscured, and it would just turn into, oh, probably no ears, a tiny little face, nose and mouth. And that's kind of like a government spook would do that kind of ridiculous thing. Yeah, I could see that. Let's go down to the local state fair and get those ridiculously large glasses. And now we got this guy hypnotized and, hey, I'm a visitor. And so it kind of starts to make sense. So anyhow, I'm saying start there because those are knowns. Those are that's stuff that everyone knows or can easily know about. Okay, so the next level would be a little more difficult for some people, but again, like I said, the occult experience, which for some odd reason, believe in it or not, think of it what you will or not, how come you cannot seem to get away from it when it comes to the context of these experiences? So you have to at least consider that there's something to it. So then you get to the issue of biological entities from elsewhere in our universe or other dimensions. To me, that's okay, but that's just down the line in my mind. Okay, let's put that way down the line because that's a lot further away from the kind of things that the government, the CIA and other governments around the world are known to have been doing, either manipulating people or just working on craft. Like we talked about the stealth program. That's just too far away. So is it conceivable? Let's just get there eventually. let's look at the stuff we know and then maybe get to that eventually, because the only people telling us that they know that are people in the here and now who are dealing with being in countries where the governments are doing this kind of stuff and where there's occultism going on. Again, however you want to understand it. So that's why in my mind, there's not really a ufology theory of everything, because like I said, when we talked about the main categories and subcategories, there's so many that one explanation won't explain them all. And maybe this explanation explains that, but it doesn't explain this. And so it's a lot more complicated than if I were to say it's all demonic. Well, wait a minute. Guys working on the stealth fighter is demonic? I don't think so. I mean, what is that? What does an airplane have to do with anything? As demonic as it might be to build a craft to bomb people into smithereens. I'm granting that, but I'm saying is there a demonic aspect of it? I wouldn't doubt it for a second. Are they able to manifest these weird things? Again, I don't doubt it for a second. But does that mean that when you saw something in the sky and it looked like a craft and you didn't identify it, oh, that's demonic? Well, maybe not, maybe so. It's just, that's how it is in my mind. Is there's so many, when you're thinking about it analytically, there's so many categories that you need to be careful. That's when you need to slow down and say, I think I got a good explanation for A, maybe B and C, but then when we get down the alphabet, when we're down to X, Y, and Z, okay, it doesn't explain that. I think I got a good handle on this stuff. I don't think I got a good one on that one. So that's, like you were saying, where we need to be careful about people who claim that they have it all figured out, because there's so much to figure out. It has so many tentacles that you can't just pretend because you have one answer, you have them all. But one of the things I often like to point out is let's listen to what these supposed aliens are allegedly telling us, the alien messages. What is it that they have to tell humanity? Because you have to kind of, that's another aspect of this altogether. Beyond the sightings, beyond the physical interactions, what are they telling us? And incidentally, I wanted to point out that you know how not too many years ago they were remaking the TV show V?
Mm-hmm. Oh
It was
yeah.
short-lived. I don't think they ever, it was very short-lived and it got canceled. But by the end of the show, the aliens were trying to build a machine that would extract the human soul from the body.
Okay.
Like, why on earth are aliens wanting to do this? I don't know. What is this? Some kind of exorcism. They want human souls, okay? And they're going to build a machine that'll do that. I mean, the show played it off with that. They wanted to experience human emotions, and they figured if they got human souls that they'd be able to do that. So, but again, why on earth are aliens being depicted interested in extracting human souls? Um, so aliens, they, for some odd reason, speak in New Age terminology most often,
Convenient.
which is very fluffy and puffy, you know. And for some reason, they usually have British accents. I don't,
Well,
you
because they're
know, I don't
intellectual
know.
aliens, of course, mate.
I
Didn't
guess,
expect
you
that.
know, yeah, you never hear an alien who's like, we done lands on Earth, yeah! You know, you never, why don't you ever get those, you know, anyhow. But to me, when I've cut through all the fluff and puff and all that, and just what are they really telling us? There's three main messages that they bring to us. And it's like the perfect disinformation in my mind, because the three claims they make are good and true, but it's the solutions I have a problem with. So they say, you know, you humans are always fighting each other. Politics, governments, you're fighting wars, you know. Okay, yeah, of course, that's always been a problem. Gotcha.
Welcome to Earth. Yeah.
And yeah, and you guys are always fighting each other over theology, you know, religion versus religion. Okay, yeah, definitely. No, gotcha. And you know, you humans are polluting the earth. You're destroying your planet. No, okay, yeah, I'm down the line. All three make perfect sense. So what do we do? Oh, well, form a one world religion with a one world government and worship the earth as a deity. It's like, huh. Now, how come your solutions are the same ones as you can find in the book of Revelation, warning us about the end time, the eschaton, and the false prophet and the beast? And all? How come it's the same goal,
The
the one
abomination of
world government?
desolation. Yeah.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
one world religion. And then out of Romans chapter 1, you would get the earth worship, which is when you deny God, then you start worshiping nature. Because again, what's greater than humanity? Well, it would be nature, and nature gave birth to us and caused the aliens to exist. And maybe they seeded us in, you go down that panspermia road. But how come that's what aliens come all from, wherever they come from? That's what they have to offer us. How come they're interested in our politics? How come they're interested in our theology? And by the way, what qualifies them to set us straight about theology? Just because they're good engineers and they're able to build a craft that can get them across the universe or from another dimension, good engineering, ergo good theology? How does that make sense? That's a non sequitur. That'd be like if our astronauts land on an alien planet and start lecturing to them about theology, you know, which would most
We would
likely
probably
mean
do
that
that.
they,
Yeah. That's that sounds like
and
humans.
but I'm saying they would most likely turn them into Masons, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, just because you know how to pilot a craft, you're going to tell me about God? How does that? How do the two things, high tech, ergo high spirituality? How? I
Yeah.
mean, maybe, but it
That's a
doesn't
bit like the
necessarily
it's
follow. Yeah.
that's perfect. So like I always pictured with the conquistadors coming and being like, well, we're God now, bro, and everyone's just like, well, he's the shiny metal man, he's got the boomstick, okay, and then they just took everything. And that's what's spooky to me too, is like, you know, you got the D Wave, I think it was the quantum computer guy, giving some speech about like the Lovecraftian entities that we absolutely want to let through, and I'm just like, whoa, dude, what? Like, you don't know, even with all the sweet fluff flowery language, you know, like John Dee in England there with the Enochian stuff, you know, like they're summoning things, and until it's here, they're going to say whatever they want to say, whatever it is, to sweeten the deal, to get you to open the gate, to get you to open the rift. And then once it pours through, I mean, who knows what it really is. And that's another thing they're putting in a lot of the movies too, like the Marvel stuff or anything, where there's always like the black cube, and then the cube somehow like is like the dimensional, you know, power gateway thing. It's in, what is it in, like Transformers, the Tesseract thing. And there's just, it's always like the same cube thing that's like, oh, we just need to like evolve. And it's kind of, like I said, it's deceptive to me. It's as though there's something that we need that this provides, when I think we've been good in history till now. I mean, like you said, we have war and stuff, but like we're just kind of going to keep doing that, right? I mean, it's interesting that if something was so much more advanced than us, that it still needs to convince us to change our ways, as opposed to just coming down from on high and saying, hey, you know, here's the stone tablet, here's the edict. You know, it's strange to me to convince,
because it's all Faustian bargain stuff.
Yeah.
Whether it's a human government or demons or aliens, it's always the same. It's always well, like we're doing right now. Oh, sure, I'll give up my freedom of assembly.
Yes.
I'll give up almost everything. I'll live in my home like in the movie Surrogates, you know, just for safety, sure. Just for technology, sure. Just for you name it. It's all Faustian. It's all you're giving away. You know, when the last, not this election, the previous one. What I was saying is the key question in other elections has been, is the economy better or whatever? But the one before this, I was saying maybe the question should be, do you have more freedoms today than you did 4 years ago? Now ask that today, and it's just a ridiculous question anymore, you know?
What freedom?
No, you essentially have the freedom to live within these tiny four walls. And I mean, the other day I went to a grocery store. I kid you not. I stood in line for an hour to get in. An hour. And it used to be a big joke. Oh, back in Jimmy Carter days, you had to line up for gas. That's how bad it was. And that was considered horrible. Today, it's like, no, you better do it. And don't you dare complain, because then that proves you don't care about your fellow human beings.
Yeah.
You know? Crazy.
An attack on individualism and liberty. Yeah, for sure. What was it? The Franklin quote, those that sacrifice security for liberty will lose both and deserve neither. Here we are. It's tough. It's tough for sure. Yeah, I don't know how long you were planning to go. I know we all got kids and lives. Okay, cool. That sounds good, actually. I think that's just enough time to get in a little more of what you're getting at there, for sure. So let's see here. Sure. What were we leaving off at? I suppose just some of what you were saying about how it almost seems like they're kind of creating the circumstances, you know, the Georgia Guidestone stuff. It's funny that whether it's the aliens or whatever avenue the message comes through, it's just, you know, oh, the planet, it's this like, you know, eco-friendly thing, but humans are the issue. You know, there's too many of them. We're bad as we are. We need to be made into some more manageable transhumanist shell, you know, the cyborg stuff, because then you could be immortal and all that, like, you know, because you need to be immortal. Like it's too much. So I'd love to definitely hear what you think about how it seems like we're being primed and set up for this whole, you know, this alien New World Order, one religion, end times agenda thing. Because for those of us that see it, it's just like, I can't believe this is really going down in my lifetime. And everybody else is just, you know, getting used to it. And that's kind of what's scary is everyone's being so quickly conditioned for just less and less freedom. And that, to me, I'm just waiting for whatever the mark of the beast is going to be. So yeah, I'd love to kind of wrap it all up with everything we've explored and explore definitely what you were saying there, because I think that's pretty key. That's where we're at right now. I think that would help a lot of people that are looking for some sort of explanation to all this. I think that this is a pretty good point to have them start from.
See, let me, okay. This is how my mind works. I'm going down through history for millennia. Okay, let's think about for a moment, like you talked about the Israelites being in the wilderness or desert for, it was over 40 years, but 40, okay, so they made their trek to Israel. After that, it was 40 years. And why was that? Because God was saying, you know, um, I need to wait for a generation who has grown up under my tutelage in a manner of speaking, right? Because the previous generation grew up as slaves, and
Right.
there's an issue with institutionalization, right? Where you become institutionalized. So if you were a slave and your parents were slaves and your grandparents were slaves, right? Then there's this certain mentality that you have, and that had to be overcome, and it's overcome by wandering the wilderness, and that generation passing away. Now you have a new one who's able to have a new worldview and a different perspective, and they're able to go into the land and hopefully do what they were supposed to, failing along the way. Well, then you have, like you mentioned earlier, Childhood's End. Okay, so in that story, the aliens land and they're communicating with us, but we don't get to see them, not for about 50 years, right? Because they wanted that generation to pass away, and the new generation who has grown up from the time they were born with the concept of there's aliens amongst us, right? And things are so different in terms of worldview that then they finally are able to reveal themselves, and they look like every creepy medieval depiction of demons
Right.
or the devil you've ever seen, even though that's not biblical, whatever. That was Arthur C. Clarke's take on it. And so then it wasn't so shocking because essentially theology had all but disappeared, a traditional theology within that mythos, I mean, of course. So that it was like, okay, yeah, these are our alien saviors. They just so happen to look like demons and devils, right? But that was why it was for a whole new worldview to come about, and so that it wouldn't be so shocking and they would be accepted like that. And incidentally, the three-part miniseries that the Sci-Fi Channel did on Childhood's End is definitely on my list to review in my newest book, reviewing movies with aliens and UFO themes. And one of the scenes I love, I love to note, I love to hate, is where he's literally using a high-tech Ouija board to communicate. It's like, dude, okay, you have to just grab our faces and jam it into, like, are you getting the picture yet?
Or where he's got
So anyhow,
the children on each hand, and it's essentially the Baphomet
yeah,
tarot card of the devil, where he's got the each hand. Oh yeah, oh yeah,
yeah, and the statue, the Satanic Temple put up in Oklahoma.
oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, so then that's kind of what's been going on is ever since I know, well, I wasn't born in North America, but I mean, I got the idea that for a lot of people, the 50s was like a golden era. Most likely if your skin was pale, it's probably that was a golden era.
Right.
And the roaring 20s wasn't that fun. Don't talk about the 30s too much, that was too depressing, but
Right.
traditional family values, and even if the whole country wasn't Christian, you could at least expect people to have a certain ethic. And let me tell you this story that blew my mind. So my pastor, one of my pastors, who lived in a small town somewhere, said, yeah, one day I asked my dad, how come we don't lock the door when we leave the house? And he said, well, what if the neighbor needs something? Duh. Why would you lock your door? Because if your neighbor needed something, he could walk right into your house, get what they needed, and yeah, that was neighborly. Duh. Or you ever see all those ridiculous movies where someone jumps in a car that isn't theirs and, oh, the keys are right here?
They're always in the visor. Yeah, they just drop down.
Because that's what people used to do. Where else would you keep your car keys? You
Different
would keep
time.
them in
Yeah.
your car. Duh. Where now, to me, that's inconceivable. To not lock your door, to leave your keys in your car, it's inconceivable. But that was just expected back then, and just to show you how much we've lost. So you have this slow, basically, the way I would put it, bottom line, is a deconstruction of God's creation, right? So his creation of reality. We want to claim that reality is subjective now. His creation of traditional family values, Well, forget those. Who are you to tell me what a family is? The creation of even human beings, where we're saying, you see the way I look? You think you know that I'm a man? Guess what? I'm whatever I claim to be. And I can do it not just by claiming I'm something different. Um, I can also get onto a website and use maybe a female name, and then people will treat me as a female and I can portray myself that way. But now I can take all kinds of crazy hardcore pharmaceuticals and go through radical reconstructive surgery to deconstruct what I actually am and be something made in my own image. So it's a deconstruction, you know. And then even if you look at like surrealism in paintings, it's not just something that looks cool. There's a worldview behind it. And the worldview is to deconstruct reality. So if in three-dimensional physical reality, a clock is a clock, in a Dali painting, it's melting, because that's something that could never happen. But when you're deconstructing reality, so it's coming at us from every conceivable angle, like an art of war type of process, where it's philosophic, it's biochemical, you know, it's sociopolitical, it's from every conceivable angle, just deconstructing. And now, like you said, people who even a year ago would have called you nuts for talking about some of the things you're talking about today, they're like, hi, can you give me some information? Because now I'm realizing that, and in 2020, anyone who's paying attention can see everything manifesting and being exposed. And I do agree with you that even if coronavirus is something that just happened, right? We didn't create it. It's just a virus that came about. It's still an issue of never letting a good crisis go to waste. And now part of it is depopulation and part of it is control. I mean, there's just no denying it. And all these things that I'm just wondering when the mainstream media are going to line up at people like Alex Jones's door and say, oops, sorry, you know, you were right about so many things. They never will, of course, but you can look back and um, when you think about all the truthers or conspiracy theorists or whatever you want to call them through the years, a lot of whom had some really good solid information. And now we're able to see how much of what any one given person was saying that was true, because we're watching it happening before our very eyes, you know, as much as we can see where they were just going off the deep end, right? Like, again, Greer talking about the importance of renewable energy. Okay, I mean, that's like an obvious and true thing, but then again, then you need to deal with his other issues. So that's, to me, that's what's going on before our eyes. They don't call it a reset for no reason. I mean, this is resetting just about everything you could imagine, from your local governments going power hungry and determining that they're going to tell you what you're going to do inside your own home. You know, that's like been the ultimate closed door. Well, now people don't just want to come out of their closet. They want to kick your door in, metaphorically or not, and tell you what you're going to do. There's countries today where you could spend time in jail for something you said in your own home. That's where we are. I mean, that's where we're living. And there's thousands of people standing behind that law going, yeah, that's right. Yes, that's right. Yeah, now we'll shut you up, you know. And well, just remember, when you point your finger, you got three fingers pointed back at you. And you might really be enjoying that kind of censorship right now because it's agreeing with you. But what's it going to take for the tide to change a little bit, and then another regime will take over that's setting its sights on you? You know,
Absolutely.
you won't like it then, but it's in place. It'll be in place.
Yeah, we have to defend the speech of even those ideas which we do not agree with,
Yeah.
because that's a fair, open forum for theories and to find truth. As soon as we shut down somebody else, they're just gonna come for us. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but they will for sure.
In fact, at one time I was the president of semi-national corporations diversity council. And boy, did I ever learn some stuff in there. The other people in that diversity council really had no clue as to what diversity actually is. Their point of view, the term I came up with is diversity becomes uniformity, right? I'll give you a real example. One of the guys said, oh, St. Valentine's Day is coming up. Oh, but we can't call it Saint Valentine's Day because someone might get offended. And I said, wait a minute now, we're the diversity council. So if someone gets offended, we explain to them that they need to be tolerant and celebrate diversity. That's what we're here for. But no, it was about censoring. It was about pretending that those real differences weren't there. Celebrating diversity is watering everything down to pretend it's all the same. No, but that's what it was like for them. It was unreal.
No, that's a great point too, because that's a huge, I feel, a false point of contention placed upon everyone these days, where if you celebrate diversity, like you said, it would be to enjoy the fact that a culture is completely different and something that you and your ancestors would never have come up with. And so you get to hear a type of music you've never even heard, or maybe your ancestors never even heard it. That to me is awesome. That to me is cool. I don't want to get away from that. I don't want us to all be familiar with the same pop song because we all know the same stuff that was given to us. Like I love going somewhere I've never seen, and patterns on clothing that I would never even come up with. Like that's like living in some story or something. That's the color of life and the spice of variety, and that's what's being taken from us is heritage and the fire of our ancestors.
We went from melting pot to smoking pot.
I love it. Now we're just a fondue pot. Now we don't even know what we're doing. This is going off the rails.
Yeah,
well,
a big goopy hot mess. Yeah, exactly.
Dude, no, this has been a good show. I feel like we scratched the surface because there's just so much of the stuff that's dovetailed and combined. We're gonna have definitely follow up, definitely do some more, maybe even like we were saying, get together with a few people and kind of just see where it goes, because it's just a big old cluster conspiracy thing that, like you said, it's got so many tentacles. It is related. That doesn't make it the same thing just because it's all related, but a lot of the same cats involved in the stuff go to the same country clubs. They all fly on the same plane and go to the same island, if you know what I mean. They're all friends, and we're the ones getting duped here as they take us all for a ride. So we just all got to stick together, no matter how crazy, like you said, even if we're seeing strange sights in the sky and hearing strange sounds that we've never heard before. Just know that, there are people that can falsify those things, and whatever you believe, you gotta stick true to your tradition and to your family and to your faith, whatever that is, because that's real. That's blood, that's heritage, that's something that you can count on and look back on. And that to me seems to be what's being kind of taken away from us. It almost seems like I've heard people say that we're having our divinity or our connection to divinity severed, so to speak. And it really seems that way. It seems like we're being cast into this new role of you can only seek anything, like you said, spiritual or meditating. It all has to be this new world order, kind of new one world religion. And to me, a lot of people might like that. Like you said, the atheism, people are like, oh, now I finally have this thing. But it actually just takes away everybody else's heritage. And so I'm glad that you pointed out a lot of those branching avenues and kind of brought it back together, because that's exactly what I was hoping for. So this has been a really great show, connecting all of those dots, and I'd love to see where it goes from here too, because I feel like every conversation like this is very necessary to getting closer to unraveling the labyrinth of the whole mystery. So what works do you have coming out soon here that you are writing right now?
Oh, right now, well, I was writing a book reviewing movies that have alien and UFO themes. And then I took a break from that to write a different book. So I wrote a review of the entire first season of Raised by Wolves.
Ridley Scott.
Speaking of Mr. Wolf,
Might have to watch that one.
Oh man, that's got everything. Everything we've been talking about almost is in there.
Romulus and Remus of the future, for sure.
Oh, it's insane. So now I'm back to the book, And I got to about page 500 and I'm like, okay, I'm going to turn this into a book series
Oh
because
yeah,
I
break
don't
it
want
up.
to, yeah, it was getting too crazy. And the more movies I thought, oh, I got to review this one. Oh, and that one will be great. And okay, it's definitely going to turn into a series because there's just too much to cover. But that's better for the audience, I think, because they'll be shorter, cheaper books. And for me, it's just been a blast writing them, and also eye-opening to just see how many of the themes, a lot of the things we've actually been talking about, how many of them have come up again and again and again from these movies from back in the golden era till today. I mean, it's unbelievable. They're all over the place. All that the same kind of stuff, just kind of repackaged, and it's been really amazing to see that.
Oh yeah, what was the first one? Metropolis, the silent one where the robot slowly becomes the lovely silent film girl with the
Well, I
cute
mean, I'm
face.
talking about alien and UFO themes, but in my book, Transhuman Hollywood, I definitely reviewed. Actually, Isaac Weishaupt contributed a chapter reviewing Metropolis for that book.
Yeah, and there's a weird connection there too between all of that, because it definitely
Oh
seems to
yeah.
be like the main agenda to get us all to be alien robot vessels for the demon overlords. I don't know. We're getting closer to figuring it out though. So yeah, where could people find your books to purchase?
For me, I've made it really easy. If you go to True Free Thinker, all one word, truefreethinker.com, I just put everything right there on the homepage. You'll be able to find the social networking sites and the books, and just everything's there, easy, user friendly, truefreethinker.com.
Nice. One little central hub
Appreciate you.
for everything that you have covered.
Yeah.
Well, I really like that you came on the show to help lend some light and clarity to some of this stuff, because it's a wild topic, and you know, years of research only gets you like more hungry for deeper truths. So I
Yes.
definitely look forward to doing more future episodes here. And
Me
like
too.
I said,
Likewise.
we'll have to get a hold of a couple people to do a little session here and
Yeah.
see if we can seek the truth
Yeah.
together.
That was a good idea. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. It's been real, and I feel like a little bit more enlightened, a little bit more less fearful of the strangeness, for sure.
Huh. Well, I appreciate you and your audience. Yeah. God bless you all.
Godspeed, man. It's getting crazy, but we just got to stay true.
Yeah.
Have a good evening. It's been nice talking to you.
Likewise.
Next time.
Bye.